Joe Alexander loved to read. His favorite books were about a mountain that stood close to his house. But as much as he loved the stories he read in these books, he loved to rip the pages out of them even more.
He loved the way they fluttered across the garden like large white butterflies. "What are you doing?" shouted his father. "Books should be respected." "I'm planting new books," said Joe, "by scattering the pages across the mountainside." Soon the day arrived when there were no books left in the house. "Into the attic," ordered his father, "until you can apologise." "For what?" "For destroying those books and losing their stories forever. Upstairs."
While in the attic, Joe found a large white book in an old trunk and began to look through it. As he did, he saw the pictures that looked familiar. They were pictures of goblins. Joe was hooked and read the pages until he was finished. Of course, as soon as he was done, he tore the pages out of the book and one by one threw them out the attic window. As the pages danced closer to the mountain, each one burst into flames. The cover of the book became hot, so hot that Joe had to throw it out the window. It landed on a tree, and the tree quickly became ablaze. As soon as the tree began to burn, it was nothing more than ash, and there in the ash sat a large bird that flew up and grabbed Joe.
Joe's mother heard his scream. As she burst into the attic, she was knocked backwards by a fierce gust of wind. A giant eagle's feather settled beside her, and when she looked up, Joe! Her son was disappearing through the skylight.
The bird took Joe high into the sky, but lost interest in him as it reached its nest. It let Joe go, and if it wasn't for the trees, he would have surely fallen to his death. Joe stood in the forest all alone, but soon he began to hear voices telling him to beware. Joe looked around frantically for the source of these voices, but there was no one there, just the trees. Frightened, Joe quickly found refuge in a nearby cave, and there he was captured by goblins.
The goblin chained Joe's neck and dragged him into a cavern full of screeching black crows and stinking, chattering goblins. They poked him with sticks and pinched his legs and breathed their foul breath all over him. There were 3 loud knocks, and the cave fell silent as a white-haired goblin entered the chamber. "Let the trial commence," he bellowed, and the goblin court came to order. "You are accused, Joe Alexander, of willfully destroying the great Book of Fog, containing the mystical ancient secrets of this magic mountain. All rise while I pass sentence."
Excuse me, but don't I get a chance to say a few words in my defence?
"No," said the judge. "That is not the goblin way." The crowd roared their approval. "Chop off his head! Drown him in a vat of goose fat!"
But I promise I'll never do it again.
"Don't believe you. Guilty! Take him away and plant him with the others."
What do you mean, plant me?
"You are to be turned into a tree, just like all the other children who think it's acceptable to tear up their books. One day you will be chopped down to make paper. One day you will be stuck together to make a book. One day you will be torn to shreds by some other miserable child." The goblins dug a deep hole in the forest and threw Joe in.
I told you to beware,
whispered a voice that Joe had heard before. So it had been a tree. It was the voice of another child planted beside him. But I didn't understand you, cried Joe. I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know. You didn't know what? Joe's mother had finally managed to open the door to the attic. You've been screaming your head off for the last 10 minutes, she said. Joe threw his arms around her. It was all a dream. I promise I'll never tear up another book in my whole life. I don't want to be a tree. I'm sure you don't, said his mother as she hugged him back. Then she took Joe downstairs to bed. And as she did so, an icy wind gusted in through the open window, picked up the giant eagle's feather and blew it out across the garden towards Goblin Mountain.
That last bit, when I was a kid, freaked me the hell out. It's just the imagery. The fact that this kid wakes up and then he is a tree. It's really creepy. That ending frame with the kid waking up and him turning into a tree was the bane of my youth. Because I stopped tearing up paper for a month after this episode aired, and I watched it. As an adult, I can appreciate this episode for its animation. There's no doubt that the earlier years of Grizzly Tales, the animation wasn't that impressive. The stories I remember, and the voiceover I remember, but I don't really remember being horrified by the animation. Goblin Mountain and Bunny Boy were the first ones in which I started being horrified by the animation. And as you go further and further into the later seasons, the animation starts taking on a whole new life. Grizzly Tales for Gruesome Kids was produced and directed by Simon and Sarah Barr from Honeycomb's Animation. It was also produced by Grizzly Tales creator Jamie Ritz. Honeycomb's Animation has other animated projects that they work on, but I have only seen one of their others, and that is Wolves, Witches, and Giants. That program also showed on CITV, or ITV, and it was a humorous take on Grimm's fairy tales. I actually saw that one first, and when Grizzly Tales for Gruesome Kids came on and I saw that it had the same animation, I thought it was going to be the same thing. Boy, was I wrong. Well, Goblin Mountain is done. What's next? Holy shit. Okay. Well, join me next time when we scare the shit out of you with the creepiest motherfucker you ever see in the tale of Bunny Boy.